Lonergan and still ongoing litigation. I'm also representing the civil staff. When I woke up this morning, to be honest, I knew that this press conference was happening this morning at 8:30 for Ms. Moriarty, and I was not entirely certain that I was going to be speaking or responding to any of that today. In fact, I kind of thought that I wasn't, but after I viewed that spectacle, I decided that I had a few things that I needed to respond to. I'm going to kind of take you through it at this PowerPoint after the press conference. I'm going to be much shorter than her 42 minutes. And then I'm going to open it up to any questions that anybody has. So first of all, what I heard today is, oh my gosh, there was all this new evidence that the defense team put in front of us. We had no idea that Ryan Lonergan was actually acting to save a partner. This was the notice of defense that we filed with the court on the day that Ryan Lonergan was charged. January 24, 2024. What did it say? As will be shown at trial, if trial proves to be necessary, because frankly, I put that parentheses in there just because of this. I didn't think that anybody, frankly, could be dumb enough to pursue this case this long. Trooper Lonergan employed the use of deadly force against Ricky Cobb to protect, one, Trooper Brett Seide from death and or great bodily harm, and secondarily, himself from death and or great bodily harm.
What is it about these cops that the representation for them that make them feel so emboldened? I mean, we know, but this guy's a fucking dick. I'm not going to share his whole thing because it's like a half hour long. I don't want to get into that, but I do want to talk about the Ricky Cobb case and this current outcome because it needs to be talked about. It's something that definitely question marks. Yes. So this is the attorney for the police officer who was charged with the murder of Ricky Cobb II in Minnesota. And I wanted to start off with this dick face first before I went into the verdict, the family speaking, and what have you. So Ricky Cobb II, for those who do not know, was killed on July 31st, 2023 after being pulled over on Interstate 94 in Minneapolis for a traffic violation. During the traffic stop, a trooper found that Cobb was wanted in Ramsey County for violating a protection order. Ramsey County officials requested the troopers arrest Cobb. Two troopers approached the door of Cobb's vehicle while the trooper on the driver's side informed Cobb he was being arrested. The other trooper unlocked and opened the passenger side door. This is when things got a bit tricky, to say the least. I want to go away from that and go to this for a second. So when the door was unlocked and opened, Cobb put the car into drive and released the brake, and the car moved forward, supposedly the passenger side. The officer on the passenger side shot twice, killing Cobb, and he was later pronounced dead at the scene. A trooper was later charged in February 2024 with unintentional murder as well as manslaughter as a result of the shooting. And this case was just dropped by Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty after what they call a review of evidence. So I want to get into footage here from the attorney that represents the family, so you can hear what the family has to say in response to the outcome here of this case. So listen up.
My name is Bakari Sellers. I'm from the Strom Law Firm in Columbia, South Carolina. We have Clay Tyler, who is from right here in the area, and Harry Daniels from Atlanta, Georgia. We're civil rights attorneys. We're civil rights attorneys who represent the family of Ricky Cobb II. There's a bit of irony in me being here, and the first thing I want to do is fall on the sword and publicly apologize to this family that I represent, because when I was here last time before you all, we expressed a great deal of faith in the process. We were very hopeful in the process, and this family, following my lead, decided we were going to wrap our arms around the district attorney here in Hennepin County. That faith was misplaced, and we stand here today frustrated. We stand here today, it's fair to say, outraged. And Ms. Miller-Fields called me yesterday, or day before yesterday, and said it was on her heart that she felt as if we were hoodwinked and bamboozled. And I think that those words are accurate. I want to lay out a few things as we go through the process, and then we're going to have a few family members speak, and then I'll come back and answer any questions. First and foremost, so you understand how this process played out and how this process was not done, we feel, with justice or righteousness, is that on Sunday afternoon, we received a phone call. I received a phone call from my clients, all of them, trying to figure out what was going on. I was unaware that the district attorney had reached out to them and wanted them to hurry down to this particular building for a 3 o'clock meeting. It was an update for the family. Clay practices law here in this county often, and I said, have you ever received a call about any of your cases at 3 p.m. on a Sunday? And during that conversation, they told us that they were dropping the charges. They had lawyers from the Steptoe firm, 3 African-American lawyers on the call with us. And during this call, I received a call from the Tribune asking me about the decision that was made. And so while we were actually meeting with Miss Mary, they were leaking their decision to get their political narrative out. And so I want you guys to understand how this process late on a Sunday afternoon played out. I've never been a part of anything such as that, and I believe that that goes to many of the issues that we have. We laid out a few things, or a few things were laid out, that the tactics that were used were horribly executed. They talked about the mishaps as presented by some of their independent investigators and special prosecutors. But all in all, there are a few things I want you all to recognize. Nothing in that video changed from the time this officer was indicted to the time charges were dismissed. Every officer in the United States of America that's been charged or accused of shooting someone unarmed has stated that they've been in fear for their life. And so Trooper Lundrigan's excuse is not anything new. The video clearly speaks for itself. I want to address the comments made this morning by Trooper Lundrigan's attorney, just on a very human level, and say the audacity of someone to paint themselves as a victim when this family had to celebrate a birthday for Ricky Cobb II and he wasn't here. When this grandmother and grandfather have to raise his children. When this family has to go to a memorial site when they want to spend time with their loved one. When this family will never be able to see him matriculate or get older or mature in life or do things that other people have the ability to do, and for you to have the audacity to say that your client is a victim, for you to have the audacity to say that somebody owes him an apology, I think is totally misplaced.
You know, I'm always astounded at how they flip the script and make the police out to be the victims.
Today, we are drafting a letter that will be completed and circulated later on, asking for the FBI and the Department of Justice, particularly the Civil Rights Division, to come in and not only investigate the shooting of Ricky Cobb II, But based upon the Hennepin County Attorney's own recommendations, we want them to investigate the Minnesota State Patrol. I've never been a part of a case where an individual was charged with a crime, then articulated his own defense, and then the prosecution said, hey, we're going to dismiss these charges because of what you told us. I've never been a part of a case where there has been such systemic and thorough undertraining, non-training. I believe that every citizen of Minnesota should be concerned now knowing that these officers go out on the streets, put themselves in danger, and do so untrained. And last but not least, all of us standing up here today, we want more African Americans to be a part of law enforcement. We want our law enforcement to be trained. We want law enforcement to be prayed for. And most importantly, we want them to be able to go out and do their job and come home safely every night. But what we also want is for individuals like Ricky Cobb II, whose only crime was apparently not having his tail light on at night, to be able to come home as well. You do not shoot into moving vehicles. You do not put yourself in danger. None of the tactics that were used by these officers were done so soundly. And I think the only thing in the past 72 hours that we've heard of some level of honesty from Miss Mary, the Steptoe firm in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, is that Ricky Cobb II should be alive today. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mama briefly to say something. Then we will have Daddy briefly say something. I always like my brother Rashad to say something. He's always speaking his truth to power. Then we will come back and take some questions. They will speak briefly. Please refrain from questions until the end.
Okay, well, good afternoon, and thank you for your time, energy, and efforts to the media. But my question is, and you should never be killed on a traffic stop, number one. Okay? That didn't make no sense. London made it home. My son didn't. And then the lies that keep rolling around the situation. Also, is it part of their law to just lie? Is that in the law book? To just lie? My son was an excellent son to me. He was fully grown, and he had aspirations. He was wonderful. He was a father, and he was a human being, a working human being, and paid taxes. So make it make sense, and thank you.
Daddy?
Yes, sir. Mine is simple. I said this once before. Justice, I knew that wasn't going to happen. The truth came out. Our taxpayers' dollars pay for untrained officers, armed, to run these streets to protect us. I don't want my taxpayers' dollars to go that way. Not the way my arthritis hurts in my body. No. And I got years to go with this kind of pain to pay my taxes. For this, I got my truth. Now I know where I stand. Thank you.
Good job, Mom and Dad.
Good afternoon. This morning we're gathered here again in disappointment in Minnesota. I wake up every day and tell myself I'm a winner. So why would I have to look at my people and consistently take losses? We have laws set in order for people to be
Sorry about that. Give me a moment. Some technical difficulties here. Oh man, sorry about that. Let me pull the videos back up. I'll start with this one.
To our first guest and our first story here, and that is the murder by Minnesota State Troopers of Ricky Cobb II. And we are very honored to be joined here on the show once again by Michelle Gross, who's the president of Communities Against Police Brutality there in the Twin Cities area. Michelle, as always, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me today. Hopefully you folks can hear me okay.
Yes, we can definitely hear you, and we are honored to have you. And maybe just to start, because this has gotten some press, but maybe not that much. For those who haven't heard, I mean, what took place, or what do we know at least, vis-a-vis these state troopers having killed Mr. Cobb?
Well, it looks like the state troopers pulled Mr. Cobb over ostensibly for an equipment violation. They claimed that his taillights were out. It looks like they were lying about that, basically. But in essence, they pulled him over, and then they kind of manufactured a reason to try to force him out of the vehicle. And he was talking to a state trooper on the driver's side. And the state trooper was saying, you need to get out of your vehicle, and, was kind of talking to him when a different state trooper came up on the passenger side, approached him right away with his gun drawn, put the gun right in his face, essentially. And we should be really clear that Mr. Cobb was never armed. He presented no threats of any kind, life-threatening or any otherwise, to either of the state troopers. And suddenly that state trooper on the passenger side opened fire on Mr. Cobb and shot him. And not only did he kill Mr. Cobb, but he also shot in the direction of his partner state troopers. They were in the line of fire as well. So it was really, sometimes you get these things where they can try to say it's justified, or they can, sort of use different reasons. This one was so blatantly not justified that people are really upset, and they should be. It's really an appalling situation.
See, I like her perspective because she talks about the things that you're not hearing from the mainstream media, and you're not hearing from the guy that I started this episode with, who was the attorney of the officer who was charged with manslaughter for murdering Ricky Cobb. Now, the way that she's running through all of this explains it in the perspective of the actual victim, not the police officer who they're claiming or trying to paint as the victim. Right. They concocted a story during an election year. Pay attention, y'all.
The police later tried to claim that he was not wanted on a warrant or any such thing, but that they had wanted to talk to him about some possible kind of domestic situation or something. But the reality is that those are not the basis for pulling somebody over, and there was no legal basis even to ask him to step out of the vehicle.
Yeah, it's really horrific. And also, of course, this took place in the same, city where George Floyd was killed by police. So I'm just curious, what does this mean about any changes, if there have been any, and whether they matter in a place like Minneapolis, if this is continuing to take place where police, killed another unarmed person, seemingly without any cause. And once again, another family has lost a father, a husband, a loved one.
Exactly. And, that's the thing. We are in a pitched battle here to try to make the police behave in a constitutional manner. It's notable that this is the state troopers. So that's the state police agency that did this. And they have a very nasty history of engaging in like high-speed chases that they don't call off. And in fact, they were involved in a high-speed chase just a few weeks prior that killed 5 people. And so, that kind of thing. And so they're very hard to hold accountable. And worst of all, our police department, I should say rather, our state relies on the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which is like sort of the state's version of the FBI, to investigate these cases. And the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, or what we call the BCA, is actually part of the same state agency that the state troopers are part of. So essentially, you've got an agency investigating itself. So we're not expecting to have a substantial or realistic or neutral type of investigation. We know that the BCA does a really poor job of investigating police cases anyway. The investigations are designed to clear the cops, and now we've got them investigating yet another part of their same agency. So we're not looking for any kind of a outcome from those people whatsoever, that kind of thing. But you're right, it's a real pitched battle to get justice. The day that Ricky Cobb was killed is the same day that we won a lawsuit for the mother of Cordell Handy, who was murdered by the St. Paul police. And we won her an $11.5 million judgment, the largest by far that St. Paul has ever paid out, the previous largest judgment being $2 million. So, there's all of these efforts in the courts to try to hold these cops accountable, and yet they don't get criminal charges. It's questionable whether these cops that murdered, or this particular cop that murdered Ricky Cobb, is going to ever see justice. So it's just an ongoing effort here to fight the cover-ups and to bring real change.
And so this episode of Breakthrough News, which y'all should follow, subscribe to on YouTube if you have not, was from couple or a few months ago, but I feel like it's still pertinent to the story, which is why I'm bringing it up, because she explains and breaks it down in a way that I just can't recount in the sense that she is. But my colleague, who is based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, who has been following this story a little more than I have actually, but Chaz Neal, the urban conservative, just sent me something from X that is slow-mo visual of the incident, and I want to share with you all briefly. Trooper Ryan Londrigan was going to testify that Ricky Cobb was reaching for Londrigan's gun. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty says they would not have been able to disprove that beyond a reasonable doubt. Video shows Cobb's hand move up.
Get out of territory now! Out of territory Get out of territory now! Out of territory now!
Really? That was like 2 seconds. That was like 2 seconds. Get out of the car.
Get out of territory now! Out of territory now!
So, wow. So this guy is not going to be charged with anything. This guy that just get out of the car now, pop, pop, he's gone. He's a free man. And he said he still wants to be a police officer.
It's such an important point, and I'm also, even go back to what you were saying to my first question. I think it's so important to understand some of these details, that he was not armed, that these other people. I mean, you hate to even have to say this, but I feel like some of why this is such an uphill battle is there's so much disinformation put out in all these circumstances. I mean, before I actually saw the circumstances of Mr. Cobb's death, I saw the tweet thread from Representative Dean Phillips, which is, about police violence in general, but he talks about the importance of understanding the fear of an officer approaching a car with a felon who may be armed. So I thought when I started looking up the case, I said, I thought that was the details, actually.
Right.
And then when they weren't, I was like, oh, wow, that's shocking. But, you know, he's an important person, well-known representative. I actually met him in Minneapolis once at a press conference of Families of Police Brutality right after George Floyd was killed, in which he said, I want to do better. And it just seems like these kind of comments are exactly the type of thing that create problems when it's sort of portraying the idea that when police kill someone, it's like one of these close-run situations. Like, it's unfortunate, but the person was also maybe a bad person.
Right. That's the framing they always do because they need some way to cover for these police. But I think you're exactly right that, you know, we've got an elected official, you know, who's supposed to be responsible to the community over here mouthing this, the fear of the police type stuff. Okay, if you're so damn fearful, excuse my language, but if you're so fearful of these kinds of encounters, don't pull these people over for nonsense. You know, this was a pretextual stop. They thought, here's a guy driving. Let's pull him over. Let's see if we can find something. You know, it was a pretextual stop with no good reasons. And if you're so fearful of it, stop doing those pretextual stops. In Minneapolis, we've got 2 consent decrees going on. One with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights and the other with the Department of Justice. That one hasn't been finalized, but we've got these, you know, consent decrees, and one of them, the state consent decree actually prohibits police from having from doing pretextual stops. This needs to happen throughout the whole state. We need to stop this practice.
You know, another element of this that's interesting is that there was dash cam footage that was released that, of course, you know, did show that the police didn't have any reason to shoot this person. And the reason I raise that is because I remember maybe like a decade ago, or even less, oftentimes the idea of the dash cam was used to say, oh, yes, like this is what's going to help, you know, keep police in line. They're going to be less likely to shoot and kill people without provocation and less likely to abuse people. But time after time, it seems like in a lot of these instances where police are shooting and killing unharmed people around the country, there is dash cam footage that actually confirms you know, what the families of the victims or the victims themselves, if they survive, are saying happened. So I'm just curious what you have to say about, I mean, the idea of the dash cam being able to be a tool in reforming police behavior in America.
Well, you know, dash cams and body worn cams are some good evidence that we can acquire. You know, I know that there's efforts in some states to actually prohibit people from having access to that information. We luckily are in a state where that kind of information is available, and we have sued multiple times to get access to it. In this particular case, they released the footage, but they didn't release all the footage. They released selected portions of the footage. And what we looked at when we examined the footage in detail is that they actually cut out 8 frames of the footage that showed some of the more important information. And particularly, when you listen to and look at the video, what you'll notice is you never hear the gunshots because they eliminated that footage. And so, you know, the information is valuable to the community, but only to the extent that we can access it. And to the extent that the police control access to that information, that's what's harmful to the community. You know, if you think what you did was so right, release it all. Just release all of it and make it all available to all of us and let us be the judges. But, you know, they want to carefully curate their stories. You know, you'll recall that the Minneapolis police actually stood on the sidewalk outside of City Hall and said that George Floyd died from a medical emergency. You know, while in the meantime, all of us are looking at the community footage that showed the real story. So we see this all the time in policing, where there's a carefully crafted and carefully narrated version that's put out to try to give the police officers, you know, some chance to cover for what they've done. And as long as they control the data, it's always going to be that way.
Well, I'm glad you raised that issue because, and especially this being a state police case, I think maybe raises this. I mean, is there something that the Minnesota state legislature needs to do? I mean, you know, I certainly, you know that they're getting a lot of credit for doing a lot of progressive things in their last session. Charges against a Minnesota state trooper have been dropped
And now reactions pouring in.
Trooper Ryan Londrigan was accused of murder, manslaughter, and assault in the deadly shooting of Ricky Cobb II. We have team coverage of the decision to dismiss those charges. Chief Political Reporter Tom Hauser will have the governor's reaction to the decision and the criticism he faced in the process.
But we start with Eric Shalou, who explains why the county attorney is dropping the charges. Eric.
Yeah, Kevin and Lindsay, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty says it was an ethical decision as to why she decided to drop the criminal charges. Moriarty says there was new evidence that came forward. Trooper Londrigan's lawyer says his client was shocked at news that the charges were being dropped. It's a case that has been mirrored in controversy since that deadly 2023 traffic stop that claimed the life of Ricky Cobb II. Minnesota State Trooper Ryan Londrigan had been charged with fatally shooting Cobb when he started to drive away as another trooper was still leaning into Cobb's vehicle. Now Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty is dropping the charges.
I know it's a struggle for people to understand, especially in community and especially the Cobb family. Why not go do that? You know, ethically, we can't as prosecutors.
In this report, special prosecutors handling the case suggested Moriarty drop the case, citing that new evidence has come forward.
There's no shame. It's not a bad thing. You charge a case and new information comes in. We have to be looking at
Cobb was reaching for the trooper's gun during the encounter, and Londrigan shot to protect himself. Moriarty says prosecutors rewatched the body camera.
and it doesn't disprove what Londrigan says.
The county attorney's office had this from day one.
Chris Mattel, Trooper Londrigan's attorney, questions Moriarty's claim that this was new evidence that his client planned to say his life was threatened. During a press conference, Mattel showed a court filing from January along those lines.
He deserves an apology. He deserves an adult to stand up and say, you know what? I messed up since day one. I made a major mistake.
Mattel says the charges shouldn't have ever been filed against the trooper.
Here's my recommendation to the county attorney. Only prosecute people when you have the facts.
The Minnesota State Patrol issued a statement that reads in part that Trooper Londrigan remains on leave as they conduct an internal review of the incident. Londrigan would like to remain in law enforcement. That's according to his lawyer. Live in the newsroom tonight, Eric Shalou, 5 Eyewitness News.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Let's bring in Chief Political Reporter Tom Hauser, who's been tracking the governor's reaction to charges being dropped.
Well, Tom, he agrees with the move, but he has been at odds with Mary Moriarty over this case really since the beginning. How did that play out today?
Well, the Hennepin County attorney had harsh words for Governor Walz, but he wasn't alone. She also claims law enforcement bullied her office and Ricky Cobb's family.
They continue to grieve a devastating loss. Amid a political circus.
Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty focused on the family of Ricky Cobb II, saying he was the victim in this case, not Trooper Ryan Londrigan. She made that case even as she announced charges would be dismissed against Londrigan. Moriarty acknowledging evidence wouldn't likely result in a conviction for the shooting death of Cobb last July during a traffic stop. But she also took aim at Governor Tim Walz.
Why is it appropriate for a governor who has never picked up the phone to call me, who is not a lawyer, who does not understand the nuances of this case, to talk about it publicly?
The governor says he doesn't need to be a lawyer to see problems with this case, and
like so many things, not an expert on immunology, but I can listen to the experts at the Mayo Clinic and make decisions. And the fact of the matter is that every other attorney came to the same conclusion I did.
Moriarty also criticized supporters of Londrigan, who she claims taunted Cobb's family before a hearing in April.
And created a gauntlet downstairs that the Cobb family was forced to walk through to get to court. Members of our staff were frightened at the spectacle, which reminded them of January 6th.
The president of the Minnesota State Troopers Association was there, says it didn't happen that way, and accused Moriarty of an anti-law enforcement bias.
The family of Mr. Cobb was treated with respect.
What's his name?
However, there was a group of individuals there that were trying to provoke both active and retired law enforcement officers and members of the public that showed up to support Ryan.
Londrigan's attorney said today he got a call last Tuesday from a lawyer for Governor Walz who asked if they still wanted the case reassigned from Moriarty's office. The governor said today he was leaning in that direction, but had not made a final decision before Moriarty decided to dismiss the charges. Lindsay.
Tom, thank you.
Can do to address some of these issues more substantively.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I smiled to myself when you said that because, we've got 8 bills that we've had at the legislature for the last 4 years that they haven't barely touched. They did finally pass last year the one of my bills, which was the ban on no-knock warrants. Although it's not a total ban, it's a substantial ban. So that's been a real battle for the last 4 years. But there are other things we need them to do. Particularly, we want to create an independent investigatory body that will make decisions about prosecutions, and actually do the investigations. We've got to take this out of the realm of the cops investigating the cops. This has to get away from that. We also want to create a mechanism where people have pretty much instantaneous access to all of the footage, unedited, at least the families have access to that footage within 24 hours. And that's a bill that we've had at the legislature for 4 years. And really, finally, the most important thing is to end qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is what protects cops who, pretend like they somehow didn't know that it was wrong to murder somebody. And we, unfortunately, people who should get justice don't get it because of qualified immunity. So we've got to end qualified immunity, both at the state level and at the federal level. And so those are all things that we're working on to try to get to happen.
So in this particular case, what happens next? You mentioned the police investigating themselves. Then what happens? I you can't predict exactly how it's going to go down, but I assume there is a typical way things tend to move. And then let's say the police investigate themselves and they clear themselves. Then what are the options in terms of being able to get justice for this family?
Sure. So here's the situation. We have a new progressive, county attorney who would be the one making the prosecutory decisions. She's done this whole song and dance number, though, despite the fact that she's, supposedly better than what we had before. She's done a whole song and dance number about, we have to wait for the BCA to finish their investigation, even though we've raised that these people are not neutral and they're investigating themselves. It's completely inappropriate. But she's towing the party line, basically. And then the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension will take 6 or 9 months to, do a quasi investigation that's got a certain design. And then they'll come back. And if it's anything like that's always happened before, there will be no charges. Now, contrast this with, let's say that there is a community violence situation that happens where, somebody kills somebody else and there's video footage of it. They wouldn't hesitate to bring charges. Why are we acting like?
My name is...
And I got years to go with this kind of pain to pay my taxes. For this, I got my truth. Now I know where I stand. Thank you.
Good job, Mama Dave.
Good afternoon. This morning we're gathered here again in disappointment in Minnesota. I wake up every day and tell myself I'm a winner. So why would I have to look at my people and consistently take losses? We have laws set in order for people to be in law and order. The citizens we have that are unarmed, that's killed by our police and our state troopers, is astronomically high. Our training in Minnesota from our DA told us that they don't have the proper training so they can go around and basically do whatever they want. I don't see everybody with a badge, so how is that fair? The only ones can run around playing Wild Wild West games is the ones who's supposed to uphold the law. When we don't uphold the law, we do time or we get charged for the crime. So why do we look at police who murder and don't get charged? I've never seen charges in 34 years brought, court dates set, everything rescinded off of a lie. But who's got a fair shot here? I don't think citizens got a fair shot here. If a law is for the citizens, then who are the citizens if it's not upheld for us then? By this time, I have to continue to walk by faith and not by sight.
Amen.
Because that's what the scripture says. And I'd rather believe the Most High than a lying government that do demonic things and want us to trust them consistently. I don't think so. And we as a people should stand up against this crap. Somebody, somewhere, feel the same way I do. And if you look like me, and if you feel like me, we should do something about it. People like Governor Walz, he's not doing his job. Let's find somebody who can. Mary, not enough balls. Let's find somebody who can. Because when we got to stand on this business, it's just business we standing on. Nothing personal. But ain't nobody standing up with us when it gets personal. But everybody want to beat us when it's personal. So I just want everybody to understand. We was moving off a peaceful movement to begin with, and we're going to continue to do as such. But one thing I want them to understand is we're not taking no's no more. Thank you.
You know, one of the things that Rashad was talking about is this family has asked throughout this entire process for people to be peaceful and lift their voices. And today we're asking for a call to action from our NAACP, our civic organizations, our Divine Nines, our churches, all of those quote-unquote progressives that say that they reside in Minnesota, all of those good folk of good common hearts and good spirits that reside here in Minneapolis. This family stands here alone. And what they've been through throughout this process, no family should have to go through. With that, we'll take a couple of questions, and then we'll, yes, sir.
Yes, I just like to know from the family, has any of you all reached out to any faith members or leaders, ministers or pastors, anything like that, to come and stand with you all in solidarity? And also, gut wrenching comment you all have received on a Sunday morning, Tony from Foxes, and I know that you had experienced something like that again when you buried her son's body. They did it again to another son's body. It's totally disrespectful to humanity.
Let me also just address, and I'm gonna let anybody who wants to answer it, but this family should not be in a position where they have to reach out to anybody. What we're asking is that the community wrap their arms around them. And I want people in the streets every single day, peacefully talking about the fact that this family was done wrong. And the reason that we believed in Miss Mary is because black folk in this country oftentimes do not get to feel what justice looks like. And so when we go down this path and we're given a semblance of hope that this will be just, we gravitate towards that, only to be let down again. Anybody want to?
Need to rephrase. Can you ask?
No.
How did the news come to you? Sunday, did Mary call personally?
Yes, she called me. Well, not her personally. You know, she has secretaries, advisors. You know, her name is Sarah. So I don't really know her title, but she called me as I was just fixing my baby's breakfast, and we had a fun Sunday. Well, it wasn't very fun because I could feel the tension in her voice, and I asked one question: is this good or bad? I'm not able to tell. You know, so that hurt my feelings, but I pushed forward and took my children out anyway. You know, and got us some relaxation. And we had to be here at 3:30. And then they held us up for a good 15, 20 minutes to bring us back to deliver this type of nonsense. And that hurt me because I had my kids with me. I had nowhere to drop them off at that time, so they had to be in this building as well on a Sunday. And they had fell asleep. Next thing I know, I had to have a staff member to watch my car. Now, if that's not so many ways disrespectful and inhumane, I don't know what else you want me to say.
Next question. Listen, we're trying to get justice. That's a decision she should make. There's an election coming up. People can make their own decision about that. People resign if they want to. They don't resign and stay on if they want to. We don't. Let me just say, Mary Moriarty's resignation is probably 97th on our list of things that we're trying to accomplish right now. We want the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to come in. We still are proceeding with our federal civil rights lawsuit against both officers. Something needs to be done with the Minnesota State Patrol. We just have a bunch of other things we want to rally the community to focus on, other than, like I think Rashad said it best. It's personal for us because it involves a loved one in Ricky Cobb II. This is politics for them, and that's unfortunate.
One thing that came up yesterday, just I found interesting and kind of just connected dots on all this. The governor, the defense attorney, in the criminal side, said he took a call from the governor's office this week or last week, wanting to know, do you still want us to intervene? That seemed like an odd governor for the defense attorney in a criminal case. I mean, did you catch that? Do you have any opinion on that type of backdoor dealing?
Sometimes you don't even need to ask the question that you answered yourself. This family's been treated so poorly by everyone. And we don't want an apology from Governor Walz. That's no need. What happened at the beginning of this case when he met with them was disingenuous. The action since then been disingenuous. If in fact he met with, and I don't trust Chris Madel, so let me start there. But if in fact what he said is accurate, I would love to hear that from the governor himself. Then I find that to be a huge problem. And hopefully not only voters, but the Department of Justice can come in and lay some eyes on that. And we've been bamboozled throughout this process, so that would not surprise me.
How do you see this influencing the civil case that's coming up as a decision?
We're still evaluating that, but the report that's been released, the executive summary, has, I believe emboldens I've never seen a litany of mistakes as outlined. But we're going to go through that process, and we look forward to handling that in the court of law. I try not to make things personal with other lawyers. However, the ad hominem woe is me from Chris Madel this morning, insulting this family, I feel as if I have to respond.
Counsel, you said something about this is politics, and with Mary Moriarty opened up her press conference, talking about the police officer dragged on the field. That's how she started off. Do you think this has something to do with like politics, and also indicated that she had been getting threat calls from state troopers, if you will?
No, Rashad and we talked about this yesterday. This morning, and our hearts go out to that officer.
Absolutely.
That officer should not be dead today. That officer should be able to come home. There is no righteousness behind murdering law enforcement in the streets. Does that have anything to do with the decision made?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Big time.
When you move that type of needle, you actually see Minnesota moving this way for a week. First you rescind 30 years on the sentence, and then this murder happened of a cop. Then you dismiss my brother's case. So Minnesota been very demonically busy speaking, right? But if we don't say nothing about the moves they're actually making, what does a situation in South Minneapolis got to do with a situation that happened last summer? But you guys put it in the same category and then made a decision to drop one so you can fight for the other. That's not fair. That's
and I would like to intercede as well. Mary did say that they didn't have the actual manpower to keep running it. And that was like, well, whose fault is that?
Yeah. That was Miss Mary did tell us that one of the reasons that they had to farm the case out was because they didn't have the resources or the lawyers capable to handle this case, which I felt was very, very disappointing. And so they brought in and they said nobody wanted to take it as well in the office. And so when you couple those things with the fact they brought in some other black lawyers to look this family in the face, it's very disappointing. We'll take one more question, if there is one.
So what will you be wanting the FBI or the federal departments to do?
Listen, the Department of Justice comes in often to the situations like this, the Civil Rights Department, and they investigate police departments around the country. I don't think there's any more glaring example of a department that needs to be investigated than the Minnesota State Patrol. All of you all have linked, I don't know if you've read it, but all of you all have linked the executive summary in every single news article that you posted. I encourage you to go back and read that executive summary and look at the failures that were outlined. Just those failures that were outlined mean that somebody needs to come in and investigate the Minnesota State Patrol. And so we're asking them to do that, because if this continues, then you'll have more innocent people. And one of the things that I won't do, and this family won't do, is allow Ricky's legacy to be in vain. And so we don't want there to be another Ricky Cobb II. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Yeah, so there you have it. The officer who shot twice at Ricky Cobb II and fatally killed him charges have been dropped. Although, listening to this lawyer, hopefully this will not be the end, and they will keep fighting to get justice for Ricky Cobb. Those are my hopes. But I wanted to update people on what's going on. There's so much going on out there lately, and it's easy for news like this to get swept under the rug. So, until next time, y'all, I actually will be back soon with some other information. But until then, check out the Urban Conservatives show. He's available Monday through Friday, and I think he's actually about to restream something. Check him out. All right, y'all. Coffin is open. Case is closed. Be blessed.